I decided to do a spin-off video from Mise en Scène about performance. Okay, so we'll be looking at, there are different elements we can look at when it comes to performance. First, we've got to consider the casting, then the actual performance themselves, so the character expression, their body codes, their movement, and proxemics, how far people are stood apart from one another. So first of all, we have to consider what actors are being cast in what roles. Are they typecast? Are they character actors? Are they stars? What is that actor's unique selling point? What's their star persona, as Richard Dyer would call it? Okay, so actors are going to be specifically cast to meet certain requirements. Now, in most cases, well, I say most cases, in a lot of cases, it's going to be, well, who is the best actor for this role? But it doesn't always work like that. Sometimes directors will be told they have to use a particular actor. So, for example, in Vertigo, Alfred Hitchcock was told he had to have Jimmy Stewart in it because he's a star. Actors are one thing, but stars are a totally different matter. Stars are box office. Stars are a selling point. They're something you can use in your marketing. People like stars. They will go and see certain films just because that person is in it. Whether that person is right or wrong for the role is sometimes irrelevant if they're a star. So there are all sorts of complex reasons about why people get cast in films. Star persona, as Richard Dyer called it, is part of that. That actor's bankability. How much is it going to cost them to pay them? Can you afford to have that actor in your film? Right? Sometimes actors will take considerable cuts in their pay just to be in a film because they believe in that movie. So look at someone like Bruce Willis, for example. He waived his normal fee to be in Pulp Fiction because Pulp Fiction cost less money to make than Bruce Willis usually got paid to be in a movie. But he believed in that movie so much, he was willing to, forego being paid for it just so he could be in it. Got to remember, that's not the kind of film that he would normally have been in back in the height of his 1990s stardom. Right? People like Bruce Willis didn't star in tiny little indie movies. Different kettle of fish now for Tarantino when you've got people like, Brad Pitt and people like that queuing up to be in his movies, right? Leonardo DiCaprio, the biggest actors in the world, right? Anyway, I digress. I bet they probably took a pay cut. But above and beyond that, you've got to be thinking, is this person right for the role? Okay? Do they have what you are looking for from that character? Some film stars have only a very limited range. They're only suitable for playing certain roles. Okay? No one is going to believe, Dwayne Johnson playing sort of like a normal guy. Right? This is not believable. Doesn't stop people sometimes. You got Bond movies casting Denise Richards as a rocket scientist, a nuclear scientist. It's like, really? Okay. But whatever. Right? Some film stars are typecast. They only ever play certain kinds of characters. Sometimes, when actors break out of their typecasting, they can be a revelation. Look at someone like Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems. I mean, normally you couldn't pay me to watch an Adam Sandler film, but he is superb in that movie. He should have won the Best Actor Oscar. It's a tragedy that he didn't. Even though I can't stand the guy's films, normally. Right? Anyway. Even capable actors, even actors who are really good, find themselves being typecast. This is often true of A-list stars who are really cast against type. No matter if they want to play certain kinds of roles, they might not be allowed to. One of the actors we're looking at, for example, is Jimmy Stewart in Vertigo, right? Jimmy Stewart usually played the all-American everyman hero. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, It's a Wonderful Life. Right? He played the ordinary man, the guy sticking up for himself against big forces, right? He was a much beloved man. He was a war hero. He was the U.S. Army Air Corps' most highest decorated officer of World War II, I think. In fact, he was a brigadier general in the Air National Guard right the way up until the 70s. You know, he flew combat missions in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Right? He was the typical all-American hero. He was cast against type in Vertigo, where he was playing a really creepy character. It was unusual. That's not the normal kind of behaviour we see from Jimmy Stewart in a movie. In Hitchcock's other film he was in, Rear Window, I mean, this is a man who spends his time spying on his neighbours with a pair of binoculars. A creep, right? So it was unusual, actually, that he's being cast against type in this film. We look at Apocalypse Now, right? At that point, when that film was being made, the role of Willard wasn't really to be Martin Sheen, it was Harvey Keitel. But they sacked Harvey Keitel within a couple of weeks of starting filming because it wasn't working. And they replaced him with Martin Sheen, and they went down a heart attack. But anyway, he wasn't the original actor. You know, Michael J. Fox wasn't the original Marty McFly in Back to the Future. It was originally Eric Stoltz. They started filming it with him. It didn't work. They replaced him. Right? Again, Apocalypse Now. They cast Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando was the biggest star in the world. He was the greatest actor of all time. He was a major sex symbol. He was a beautiful man. They cast him as a Green Beret Special Forces soldier. He was supposed to be some hard-as-nails super soldier. And when he turns up, he is gigantically, massively overweight. This causes a problem. They had to use body doubles. They had to shoot him in the dark so you couldn't see the fact that he was fat. But it worked. They pulled it off. Yeah? They made him look even more menacing. So anyway, who's being cast is important. Sometimes this has been causing controversies. Think about the controversy of whitewashing. So you get Caucasian actors being cast in roles that are meant for people of colour. You think of someone like Scarlett Johansson in the Ghost in the Shell movie. Although to be fair, the Major in the Ghost in the Shell anime and the original manga doesn't particularly look Japanese. But we'll ignore that. Then you've got people like Emma Stone and Aloha who are supposed to be playing a character with an Asian name. This was an Asian character. Something, I think. Vietnamese or something, right? Then you've got actual whitewashing, where or people in blackface, right? The nearest one I can think of this was Angelina Jolie in A Mighty Heart, where she's literally had makeup changing it to make her look more ethnic. You've got films that do the opposite, like White Chicks, where you get like black characters pretending to be white. Anyway, controversial. Hopefully that kind of stuff will end in our more woke 21st century society. Now, you've got some actors who've got massive range. They can be both stars, but they are also great actors. Now, you've got character actors. Character actors are cast because they are good actors, not because they are necessarily pretty or charismatic. Then you've got people who can cross that. Yeah? Think about the truly great actors who can transform themselves in a role. You think of someone like Sir Ben Kingsley, who played characters as diverse as Gandhi. He was in Schindler's List. He was in Sexy Beast. He was slumming it for a paycheck in Iron Man 3. He was Fagin in Oliver Twist. I mean, a massive variety of roles. I mean, if you've not seen Sexy Beast, the character he plays in that, the villain, is flat out one of the most intimidating and scary characters you will ever see in any film ever. And I can remember seeing this and thinking, that's the guy who played Gandhi. And he's terrifying me. Because he's a great actor. You think of Meryl Streep. You think of Judi Dench. Yeah? These actors who completely subsume themselves in a role. They can be great actors and great stars. Sometimes you have people who are great actors but not great stars. Sometimes you have people who are great stars but not good actors. You cast a character depending on what you want and what you can afford. Right, let's break this down into bits. Right, so acting expression. Acting style. The expression on their face. The emotion they're able to convey. Expression plays a vital role in creating spectator engagement. It helps us to create a verisimilitude. Bad acting can ruin a film for an audience. Good acting can transform even shoddy movies. And it helps us to empathise with the character. Right? Jimmy Stewart was a great actor. Buster Keaton is one of the great genius actors of all time. You know, Martin Sheen was great in Apocalypse Now. Yeah? A lot of filmmaking is about reaction shots. It's about reactions. Because reaction shots tell us how people are feeling. As I said in the mise-en-scène video, one of the things about Buster Keaton, Old Stoneface, is he had what's called a very similar acting style. If we look at Jimmy Stewart and Kim Novak in Vertigo, by today's standards, their acting doesn't seem that realistic. It seems forced. It seems, you know, artificial. Whereas in today we're moving towards a, you know, this is before method acting became a thing. When you had people like, you know, I don't think his name now, Marlon Brando, and you had people like James Dean who transformed acting forever and brought into it this, you know, they went this kind of verisimilitude. They'd been through the actor studio with Stella Adler and all this kind of stuff, and they learned this new style of method acting where you literally live the character, right? That transformed acting, and now we've got a much more very similar, realistic kind of acting style in some movies. Not all movies, but some movies. Close-ups are an important part of this. Actors communicate meaning to the audience through the emotions on their faces. Now, as I said in that other video about silent cinema, you know, the only acting influence they had was theatre, and of course theatre is about projection. You have to project to the stalls. You have to project to the person sat farthest away from you. They have to be able to get your emotions. So stage acting is all about big acting. I'm generalising here. I know that's not always true, but you know, I'm exaggerating for effect, right? So stage acting was about projecting, right? Think of someone like Laurence Olivier, for example, right? But film can have close-ups. Film can be intimate in a way staging acting can't be. You know, because you can get right up in the character's face in a way that most conventional stage acting doesn't. The great film critic and filmmaker Mark Cousins, who's got a brilliant video channel on Vimeo at the moment, which is Learn Film Studies in 40 Hours. I highly recommend it. It's superb. Right? But he says that the whole point about cinema is the close-up of the human face. That is, for him, the defining characteristic of cinema. And this is why a lot of our directors preferred the old 4:3 Academy ratio, because it really helped to focus on the human face. But that's not to say we can't do this in a 16:9 or a 2.35:1 format. You can still have beautiful close-ups of faces. As I said, this was particularly true during the silent era when actors had to tell the story without dialogue. Alfred Hitchcock once stated that dialogue should simply be a sound among other sounds, just something that comes out of the mouths of people whose eyes tell the story in visual terms. Alfred Hitchcock was a very visual filmmaker. He was a filmmaker who believed in show, don't tell, in what Henri Chamont might have called pure cinema. Although that's not really what pure cinema is, but you know, whatever. Right? He came from that silent period, and you know, you should, in really great filmmaking, be able to follow the story without the dialogue, because it's about showing, not telling. If you've got to rely on a lot of clumsy, heavy exposition, you're doing your job wrong as a filmmaker. Right? Show, don't tell. That was the genius of people like Hitchcock. And close-ups do that. You want to learn about close-ups? Go and watch Passion of Joan of Arc, silent film, and it's a masterpiece. Absolute genius. The performance, the way it uses the close-up of the actress's face. Can't remember the name off the top of my head, but it's a work of sheer genius. Go watch that, it's a masterpiece. Right, close-up shots can emphasise and indeed even fetishise an actor's face. It allows them to convey emotion with the subtlest of facial movements, the raise of an eyebrow, a slight smile, a flick of the eyes. Close-up shots are a vital part of creating an actor's star persona. Richard Dyer, remember, it emphasises the actor's beauty. Especially true of female film stars, but any film stars in general. The close-up is an important component of what Laura Mulvey would have called the male gaze. Of fetishising the actor's beauty. And that's as true for Tony Leung as it was for Kim Novak. Hitchcock films, of course, are very voyeuristic. Then we've got to consider body codes. Banyahia, Gaffney and White. Sorry if I mangled your name there. These are the ways in which actors use their body and performance to create meaning for the audience. Now, this is particularly true in silent cinema, but it's true in all cinema, right? You've got to consider how the actors work on their own, but also together. So we consider direct body contact. How do people touch one another? Is it a caress or a punch? Right? Is it a grope or is it a light brush? You know, how do they touch each other? There's the proxemics, how far away they stood from one another. There's orientation, what direction are they looking, right? Are they looking at each other? Have they got their back to each other? Whatever. Appearance, what do they look like? How are they dressed? How have they stood? Yeah, are they fully made up? Do they look a mess? Head movements, obviously. Facial expression, yes. Then there's the paralinguistic codes, the Kinesics. Gestures. How do you talk without talking? The way you fling your arms around, the way you shrug, the way you nod your head, the way you roll your eyes, whatever. Posture. Are they sit up straight, shoulders back, chest out, head high? Are they slumped? Are they, pulled in on themselves? There's eye movement. What are they looking at? Are they making eye contact with people? Are they looking off screen? Are they looking up? Are they looking down? What are they doing? Then, their speech. Not what are they saying necessarily, but how are they delivering those lines? How are they saying it? As we said, proxemics, how far away they stood from one another. Okay. La La Land. Right? Seb and Mia stood very, very close to each other. They're dancing. It's an intimate, romantic act. Shows their love. Look at how they're staring deeply into one another's eyes. But they're also stood up straight. They're stood up proud. There's something's a little stiff about that. Again, vertigo. Look at how far everyone has sat from one another. It shows isolation. It shows Scotty feeling isolated. He's feeling persecuted. Also notice how his blue shirt makes him pop. Everybody else is kind of, they're wearing grey. Makes him stand out, draws the eye. Orientation, again. What are they looking at? Who are they looking at? Are they looking at each other? Are they looking off? So I said, what direction are they facing in relation to one another? There's this thing called frontality, where actors are arranged so they're facing the camera so the audience can see their faces. If two people are having an argument, they'll probably be looking at each other. But in this case from Vertigo, they're both, Madeline's got her back to Scotty so we can see her face. Right? It also shows that she's turning her back on him. It's showing that she's rejecting him. Then if we look at this shot from Mustang, look at how they're all sat very close together. Look at how they're, she's holding her wrist. She's got her arm over her. It shows their solidarity. It shows their togetherness. But they're not looking at each other. Look, they're all looking in different directions. She's looking down. She's got her eyes closed. She's looking up there. She's looking off there. It shows that they look embarrassed. It shows they look persecuted. It shows they look sorry for themselves. Then we've got your paralinguistic codes and your kinesthetics. Aspects of communications that don't involve words. These can be used to add emphasis or shades of meaning to what people are saying. But it's about body language, it's about gestures, it's about facial expressions, it's the tone, it's the pitch of your voice. And there's the difference between expressionistic acting and very similar acting. So, over-the-top, exaggerated, unrealistic acting. So you've got someone like, Buster Keaton, who was known for his very, very similar acting. By the standards of his day, his acting was very naturalistic, it was very believable. You've got, again, in Apocalypse Now, you've got Marlon Brando. He was well known for bringing a new level of very similar, believable method acting into cinema to make it seem believable. And then you've got, oh God, what's his name? I've forgotten. I can't remember his name, but anyway, stupidly famous. His acting, he's well known for being completely bonkers, bouncing off the wall, over the top acting. Movement, again, very important for creating rhythm and pace, kinetic elements of it, and movement. Very important in action movies, very important in musicals and dance movies, very important in slapstick comedies. It creates spectacle. I think there's a very close similarity between martial arts movies and musicals. They've both got the same kind of spectacle. It's about physical body and movement. People doing stuff that, the likes of you and I aren't capable of. And then there's your dialogue. Dialogue authenticates the speaker as an individual or real person rather than an imaginary character. It expresses emotion and motivation. When vocal delivery fits an actor's physiognomy and gestures, a believable person is created. If you see someone big and muscly and powerful, you expect them to have a deep, booming voice. If they've got a very high-pitched voice, it sounds weird. Look at Mike Tyson, for example. His voice doesn't seem to match his physical persona. And if that doesn't fit in a character or performance, then the audience isn't going to believe that character. This was a common problem in silent cinema. A lot of actors who had become massive stars on their physical beauty and their ability to physically perform suddenly couldn't carry on into the sound era because they had voices that didn't match their looks. They might have had thick regional accents or foreign accents. They might not have been able to speak English very well, and it ruined their star power. So how an actor delivers their lines, it can tell the story, it delivers exposition, it conveys emotion, it establishes character motivation, it identifies character traits, their gender, their social class, their ethnicity, it identifies their geographic and temporal location, language, dialect, accent, things like that. If you don't get that right, it can ruin a movie. I mean, think of some of the terrible accents in film. Think famously Dick Van Dyke in Mary Poppins. Think Russell Crowe in Robin Hood. Or indeed, what's the other one? Kevin Costner in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Terrible British accents. Because British actors tend to be better at accents than a whole. But not always. I mean, I never got on with the TV show House because I thought that the Hugh Laurie's American accent was awful. Americans didn't seem to notice, mind you. But, you just don't buy it. Not many American actors could pull off a convincing British accent. Anyway, all of these things could tell us something about that character. So, that covers, some of the bits and pieces when it comes to acting. I mean, you're not doing an acting course. I'm not going to go into it in any absolute massive detail. As I said, we'll be going on to editing next. Yet again, if you've got any questions, you know where I am. And I'll see you in the next one.